Welcome to Malifaux University. November 2022 Errata Update Models. In response to feedback from players, observations of how models are used, and the discovery of innovative applications of the rules, Wyrd regularly updates the rules in a document called the Errata. While the name implies corrections to errors, it's better to think of it as balancing the scales. This video will explain simply how the November 2022 Errata changed the models, and will present them in the order they appeared in the Errata document. Another video explains the rules changes. This will be neither a strategic analysis nor an opinion piece on the changes, and your personal insight and feedback is welcome in the comments. Arcanists. Mei Feng, Foreman. The titled version of Mei Feng received a few tweaks and adjustments. On the front of her card, her Heated Iron ability is now an aura effect. Clarifying that this is an aura removes any doubts or arguments about whether a scrap marker beneath Mei Feng would count. It does, and also makes this ability vulnerable to any effect that negates auras. On the back of her card, the Foreman was taken down a notch. Her Lay Tracks bonus action saw a bump in its stat from 6 to 7, but the target number also rose from 10 to 12. While she needed only a 4 to make it happen before, now she needs a 5 or better. Additionally, the target number for enemy models to resist the effects of this action dropped from 13 to 12, making it easier to avoid. Lastly, the cost of her Steelcraft tactical action went up from 2 scrap markers to 3, which must all still be within the 4-inch pulse range. Bayou. Ophelia LaCroix, Overloaded. The titled version of Ophelia LaCroix is a little less crazy go-nuts with this errata's changes. A major mechanic of this model is giving arsenal upgrades to members of her crew that give them new attack actions. With her Gimme That Back ability, each other model could use that upgrade only once before having to discard it, but this ability gave them focus +1 when they discarded it. Not anymore. Now the other kin models just lose the upgrade after using it. Her Hold These For Me ability previously let any member of her crew that was within 2 inches and line of sight of Ophelia or a young LaCroix model anywhere on the table attach another arsenal upgrade to themselves or any other friendly kin keyword model close to them. With this update, only kin keyword models within 2 inches of Ophelia or young LaCroix models anywhere on the table can do this. Furthermore, when her crew members use these arsenal upgrade attack actions, they no longer get the +1 to their duels from the Bigger They Are ability if they happen to have that ability. On the back of her card, her Raiding Operation bonus action got a major reality check. Previously, Ophelia's bonus action let 3 kin models in her line of sight discard their arsenal upgrades and take one of 4 actions, including summoning another model and dropping a scheme marker. Now, it's limited to a 12-inch range, has a stat 6 and a target number of 8, but the target number increases by 2 for every kin model she targets. So if she wants one model to discard its upgrade and take one of the 4 listed actions, the target number is 10. 2 models has a target number of 12, requiring her to flip a 6 or better, and 3 models has a target number of 14, requiring an 8 or better in her flip. It still doesn't say other friendly kin models, so Ophelia herself can still be one of the models targeted by the action, as long as she also has an arsenal upgrade attached, since every model has line of sight to itself. The Brewmaster, Moonshiner. The titled version of the Brewmaster had an elaborate combination of results when he used his Another Round attack in conjunction with his Tipsy Slide and Barroom Brawl abilities. Previously, he could throw a shockwave marker here in the middle of these 3 models. Let's say the 2 enemy models fail the willpower duel and gain poison +2. The Tri-Chi model chooses to fail and doesn't have to flip, and he gains poison +2 as well. Since this is the first time these models failed to resist this attack during the Moonshiner's activation, they suffer 1 damage from the poison condition and lower it to poison +1. The Tri-Chi model also lowers his poison condition, but suffers no damage since it has the High Tolerance ability. That's all well and good, but let's say they're within the 8-inch aura of the Moonshiner's Tipsy Slide ability. The Tipsy Slide ability says the Moonshiner gets to move each of those 3 models 1 inch, since they would each suffer 1 damage from poison before they suffer the damage. Once they're done moving, the Barroom Brawl ability states that the Tri-Chi model can lower its poison condition by 1 to have the enemy model within 1 inch of it suffer 1 damage. Once that's done, then all 3 models resolve the poison condition according to the Another Round attack as previously described. You can imagine how this convoluted layering of effects can disrupt a game and even lead to arguments about which effect occurs in which order. With this Errata update, playing the Moonshiner can be just as effective while being less confusing. The Another Round attack action no longer resolves the poison condition immediately. Models affected by it gain poison +2 and are pushed up to 3 inches, but may be pushed in this way only once per turn. The new rules for relenting state that a model in a simple duel generated by a friendly model may relent before flipping cards, so Tri-Chi models may still choose to take the poison +2 and get pushed since it may be to their advantage to do so. Barroom Brawl is no longer restricted to just Tri-Chi keyword models. It now says that after the Moonshiner moves any model, he may lower the poison condition of the moved model by 1 to have an enemy model in base contact with the moved model take 1 damage. Since models are not said to be in base contact with themselves, this naturally means the damage is suffered by a model other than the one with the poison condition being lowered. There is also the provision that each enemy model can suffer only 1 damage this way per activation or start phase, so it won't matter if you have several models all bump into the same enemy model. It'll still suffer only 1 damage. That takes us back to Tipsy Slide. Instead of interrupting the Another Round action, this ability now takes effect in the start phase. The Moonshiner can choose up to 3 models within an 8-inch aura of himself, so that includes the Moonshiner as well. He pushes each model a distance equal to half of that model's poison condition without lowering the condition. Malifaux math says you usually round up when dealing with fractions, so a model that has poison +1 will push 1 inch. Poison +2 or +3 pushes 2 inches. Poison +4 or +5 pushes 3 inches, and so on, to a maximum of 5 inches at poison +9 or +10. So now instead of 2 abilities and an action all fighting for attention, Tipsy Slide may push some models around in the start phase. Another Round pushes models around during the activation phase. Either way, Barroom Brawl can now take effect after either push is complete. The last change to the Brewmaster Moonshiner is to his Open the Gourd bonus action. Previously, a player could activate the Moonshiner first in a turn and use this bonus action to create a 2-inch area of hazardous terrain around a marker or model that lasted until the Moonshiner's next activation. If the Bayou player didn't activate the Moonshiner until the end of the following turn, it effectively made the hazardous terrain last for 2 full turns. The new text says the hazardous terrain effect lasts until the end phase, and that's it. Explorers Society. Maxine Agassiz, Monomaniacal. The titled version of Maxine Agassiz received a few changes to rein her in a little. The Breach Burnt ability makes every EVS keyword member of Maxine's crew a healer. Whenever they discard or cheat fate with a card matching the suit of their reconfigure abilities, a tome in the case of Maxine, that model or another friendly EVS model within 6 inches of it heals 1. Depending on the model and their actions, you could have models healing 2 or 3 points of damage to themselves or others during every activation. The new version adds the limitation that models cannot heal this way more than once per activation. While some may now try to argue that this statement limits the use of this healing effect to once per activation, the usual interpretation of this phrase is passive, meaning to be healed, which is to say that a model may not be healed this way more than once per activation. If Maxine were to cheat with or discard 3 tomes during her activation, she could heal 3 different EVS models, including herself, 1 time each. If there were only 2 damaged models within 6 inches of her, though, the third instance would have no effect on anyone. On the back of her card, Converging Ley Lines is an action that can move models around quite a bit. With the flip of a 5 or better, it placed a shockwave marker with a 2-inch reach, which effectively creates a circle with a 5-inch diameter up to 10 inches away that can place all affected models anywhere within that 5-inch circle, and EVS keyword members of Maxine's crew could relent to ride for free. The Errata text raised Maxine's target number to 13, so now she needs a 7 or better to make this happen. It also lowered the willpower resistance number from 14 to 13, making it a little easier for enemy models to avoid being jerked around. It doesn't say EVS models can relent for free, because the new rules about relenting include friendly-generated simple duels like this, so now it is understood that friendly EVS models could relent if they wished. Etheric Tear also received a couple of tweaks. Maxine's stat lowered from 6 to 5, and the attack is resisted by movement now instead of willpower. Instead of injured, the attack now gives the staggered condition. Staggered is also an additional effect of the Split Across Worlds attack. Nexus, one of many. This triplicate master received many changes in this errata. We'll look first at what was simply taken away or removed. One of Many's health was reduced from 7 to 6. Previously, the Many Voices ability allowed the player to hire 2 additional Nexus One of Many models for free. It still does, but now you no longer get 2 Shambling Nest minions for free, since this ability says the Shambling Nests lose their totem characteristic, whether you hire the other 2 One of Many models or not. The Will of the Many tactical action is a limited Obey type action with a trigger that allowed the player to ignore the insignificant trait of the targeted model, which was a tricky way of getting a model that previously wouldn't count for schemes or strategies to suddenly score a victory point. That trigger is just gone now, so insignificant models will remain so. While we're looking at tactical actions, all 3 of One of Many's tactical actions now have the same stat and target number, matching the stat 6 and target number 12 of Playthings. Playthings, however, has been toned down to no longer allow the player to push any number of Cadmus keyword models within 4 inches of One of Many, but now pushes One of Many and up to 2 other friendly Cadmus models. The Drain Life attack action was slightly changed. The stat dropped from 6 to 5, but still has an embedded mask, which guarantees the once per turn Join Us trigger. That trigger gives an enemy model a parasite token and allows Nexus to summon an Eyes and Ears model when that model is killed. The new text now puts the price of at least 1 parasite token on that summoning. So if other game effects, such as the Forced Reaction ability, remove the parasite tokens before the model's death, the summoning effect is cancelled. Speaking of Forced Reaction, this ability previously allowed the Cadmus player to remove a parasite token from an enemy model after it cheated fate to reduce its duel total by 2. It still allows the Cadmus player to remove a parasite token to reduce the model's duel stat by 2, but now the Cadmus player must choose to do this after the enemy model flips a card in a duel, not after the player chooses to cheat fate or not. This now allows the enemy player to see the adjusted total and make a choice to cheat fate after the parasite token is removed. The last change to Nexus One of Many is to the Burrowed into the Spine ability. Previously, this ability immediately caused 1 damage and healed a Cadmus keyword model within 4 inches when an enemy model gained a parasite token. Since several actions and abilities in the Cadmus keyword give parasite tokens, this resulted in quite a bit of damage and healing being thrown around. The new wording of this ability ties it to the current activation and keeps it from being used repeatedly in the same activation or on the same enemy model. Let's say Francisco and Santiago Ortega are attacking a Nexus One of Many according to the old rules. Francisco swings his balanced sword at the Nexus and misses. The Living Nest resistance trigger gives him a parasite token, and the Burrowed into the Spine ability causes him 1 damage and heals the Nexus 1. Francisco tries again and fails, gaining another parasite token, but he doesn't take additional damage and no one heals, since he's already taken damage from this ability during this activation. When Francisco finishes his activation, he uses his Aporel ability to let Santiago take an action. Santiago fires his custom Peacebringer at the Nexus and fails, giving him a parasite token, causing him 1 damage, and then healing the Nexus model again. In the new Errata rule for this ability, the scenario plays out the same way, but with different results. Francisco swings at Nexus and misses, gaining a Parasite token. He swings again, gaining another Parasite token. Francisco ends his activation, and Burrowed into the Spine takes effect, giving him 1 damage and healing the Nexus 1. The guild player then gets to use the Apparel ability on Francisco and let Santiago attack. Santiago fires and misses, gaining a Parasite token of his own. Since this action is taken outside of an activation, it would not meet the terms of Burrowed into the Spine, so no additional damage or healing occurs. Guild. Charles Hoffman, Inventor. The errata changes to the titled version of Charles Hoffman reduce the juice in his batteries a little bit. The Arc Node's ability still creates 4 pylon markers as before. Friendly augmented keyword models that start their activations within 3 inches of a pylon marker still get a power token, but now that's it. Previously, they also got shielded, but no longer. Also, it was possible for Charles Hoffman, Inventor, to double dip the power tokens by starting his activation near a pylon marker and also removing a nearby scrap marker to gain another power token. The new text of Arc Nodes specifically says models cannot do this. On the back of his card, most of the Inventor's actions have been amended as well. Construction Claw has the same stats and triggers, but now can place the target within 1 inch of its current position, not within 2 inches of Charles Hoffman's position. Alternating Current is now a projectile attack, which means Hoffman cannot use it while engaged by another model. It previously could not target the same model more than once per activation, but now cannot target the same model more than once in a turn. The damage is still increased based on the number of pylon markers near the target, but now is capped at +2 instead of +3. Furthermore, the Power Spike trigger can now be declared only if the alternating current attack was against an enemy model, which keeps the player from hitting one of his own models for 1 damage and giving a bunch of nearby models power tokens. Lastly, the stat on the Security Defense's bonus action is lowered from 7 to 5, but still carries an embedded crow, guaranteeing the detonate trigger. Lady Justice, Death Touched. The titled version of Lady Justice received many changes in this errata that will significantly affect how she is played. For starters, she has lost the regeneration ability. She can still heal herself if she gets the focused cleansing trigger on Entropic Debt, but that attack action also received several changes. We'll come back to that in a minute. The unique Kytheran Sight ability, which allowed her to target buried models and said she didn't need line of sight against any target, is also gone, replaced by the more commonly seen Beyond Time, which simply allows her to target buried models with any of her actions. Any unburied target now requires line of sight. The last 2 changes on the front of her card are somewhat related. Previously, Marshal's Coffin allowed a friendly Marshal model to suffer 1 damage to create a coffin marker when it used the Pine Box action, placing it within 1 inch of itself and an enemy model. Now, the cost of the action is a discard instead of the 1 damage, and when the coffin marker is created, it still must be within 1 inch of the Marshal model, but now must be in base contact with an enemy model. Consecrate Ground still allows friendly Marshal models to move through their coffin markers, but now they can also ignore the height 2 and blocking coffin markers when drawing line of sight, which is pretty cool. On the back of Lady J's card, her balanced sword is unchanged. Everything else, though, Entropic Debt got rid of all of its positive modifiers, both in the stat and in the damage flip against undead models. On the positive side, though, the stat went up from 5 to 6. The Lead the Hunt trigger was removed, but was partially incorporated into the regular attack effects, giving the adversary condition to undead models. Also, this projectile attack picked up Ignores Line of Sight from the Lost Kytheran Sight, so this is one attack that can still shoot around corners. Equilibrium and Ashwood Coffin traded places, with Ashwood Coffin no longer being a bonus action. Ashwood Coffin also gained a crow embedded in the stat, guaranteeing the new Second Chance trigger, which allows Lady Justice to do it again if it fails the first time, and it might fail more frequently now that it has a target number of 10 and is limited to being used only once per turn unless the second chance trigger is used. The effects of the Ashwood Coffin also changed. It used to give Injured, where it now gives Distracted. It still buries the target, but when the target unburies, it used to unbury in base contact with a martial model within 6 inches of Lady Justice. Now the guild player can choose to unbury the target in base contact with a martial keyword model or a coffin marker within 3 inches of Lady Justice. Equilibrium generally got a boost with this errata. It's a bonus action now, so it can be used only once per activation, but its range increased from 6 inches to 10 inches, and its stat bumped up from 6 to 7. So now it needs just a 5 or better to make it work. The range of the shockwave marker also expanded from 1 inch to 2 inches, and it still automatically heals friendly martial models, which could include Lady Justice herself. The forced burial trigger, which allowed the player to take the Ashwood Coffin action on a crow, is just gone, replaced by the surge trigger on a tome, which lets the player draw a card, also kinda cool. The last change to Lady Justice Death Touched is to the Burial Rites tactical action. The effects of the action are unchanged, but now there is the option to take it as a bonus action if desired. Neverborn. Pandora, Tyrant-Torn. The titled version of Pandora received a handful of changes, mostly pretty positive for fans of this model. On the downside, her Expose Fears ability is now limited to just once per activation. The range of the aura in her No Shelter Here action was also reduced from 3 inches to 2 inches, a minor adjustment. On the plus side, Aspect of Fortune still allows Pandora to cheat fate with the top of her fate deck, but also lets her add a positive modifier to duels related to her defense stat. Since it says may add, the player is not required to flip 2 cards if not desired. Additionally, Pandora now has the Heed No Fear ability, which was previously unique to the guild Monster Hunters and prevents her from being saddled with the adversary condition. Outcasts. 33. This Outcast Enforcer received 2 changes to the back of her card. As a small adjustment, the backtrack trigger on the A Year and a Minute bonus action now specifies that it cannot draw either Joker card from the player's discard pile. The other change was quite a bit more substantial. The Pine Box attack, which had a Torn into the Void trigger, has been completely reconfigured, so that Torn into the Void is now the primary effect of the attack. It has a stat 6, is resisted with willpower, and still can target only enemy models. The 2-3-5 damage from the old trigger is now the attack's effect, but it might also place either model up to an inch away, depending on the duel totals. The old attack's bury option is now in the Glimpse the Void trigger, available on a tome. Since altogether this is not the Pine Box attack it used to be, the Marshal's Coffin ability on Lady Justice Death Touched no longer allows 33 to create the coffin marker just for taking the Pine Box action. The new Slam the Coffin trigger, however, allows 33 to create a coffin marker herself without needing to rely on Lady Justice's ability. Resurrectionists. Kirai Ankoku, Envoy of the Court. This version of Kirai received 2 relatively minor changes to her actions and 2 rather significant changes to her abilities. To get them out of the way, her Sundering attack, which increases the damage based on how many Urami models are engaging the target, is now capped at a +2 increase. The Vengeance Incarnate bonus action, which gives the adversary condition and summons the Ikirio Enforcer to the table, gained a crow in its target number, meaning Kirai will have to use a Soulstone to put a crow on her flip to guarantee success if she cannot cheat in a crow of 8 or higher from her control hand. On the front of Kirai's card, the wording of the Revenge ability has been expanded and made more specific at the same time. Previously, if an enemy model within 8 inches in line of sight of Kirai had the adversary condition and had to make a willpower duel, it suffered a negative modifier to the duel. It also had a negative modifier on any actions targeting Kirai. Now, Enemy models with the adversary condition within 8 inches in line of sight of Kirai suffer a negative modifier to willpower duels generated by Kirai or by Ikirio, her totem. Those models still have a negative modifier to any actions targeting Kirai, but not targeting Ikirio. The biggest changes are in the Join Us ability. For starters, it was renamed Chained Spirit. When it was Join Us, after any action in which a friendly Urami model, many of which are incorporeal, moved through an enemy model, that enemy model would have to make a willpower duel of 13 or higher, or else Kirai would summon a minion of cost 4 or lower, so a Seishin, Gaki, or Enslaved Spirit, into base contact with the enemy model. This could happen anywhere on the table, as long as the enemy model hadn't already failed this willpower duel this turn. With the new wording of Chained Spirit, the first requirement is that Kirai Ankoku be within 8 inches. It's not an aura, and it's not a targeting effect, so line of sight isn't required, but she has to be relatively close to the enemy model. The next change is that not just any Urami keyword model qualifies for this ability. The Urami model moving through an enemy model must have a soulstone cost of 5 or higher, so an Onryo, Guisen, Goryo, Ikirio, Datsuba, or Jakuna Ubume. The target number to resist has dropped from 12 to 13, so it's a little easier to avoid, but the restriction that the summoned model have a cost of 4 or less is still in place. 10 Thunders. Yon Lo, the Spirit Walker. The Errata document lists Yon Lo with the Resurrectionists, but the 10 Thunders need some love too. Yon Lo the Spirit Walker received significant changes in this round. We'll follow them down his card. First off, his defense stat dropped from 6 to 5. His first ability, Ancient Anchor, relates to his reliquary upgrade, which was also changed, so we'll come back to them both. His Clear the Path ability was completely removed, but he gained the unique Spirit Guide ability, which lets him draw a card once per activation when certain members of his crew attach reliquary upgrades. Lingering Voices facilitates Yon Lo's Obey action when targeting retainer keyword models with reliquary upgrades, previously giving him the suits he needed for both his target number and the trigger that gave the target focused. Now, the ability gives just the mask for the target number. If Yon Lo wants to hit the tome for the trigger, he'll have to use a soulstone or cheat like everyone else. Incorporeal hasn't changed at all. Going down the back of Yon Lo's card, the first change is to Twist Reality. The attack itself is unchanged, but the Hole in the World trigger, which placed the target somewhere within 6 inches, has been replaced by Knock Aside, which simply pushes the target 4 inches. Since Spirit Guide is now the name of one of Yon Lo's abilities, the Spirit Guide trigger on his Obey action has been replaced by Preparations, which still gives Focused +1, but can be declared on any target, not just non-Ancestor keyword models like before. The stat and target number for Final Wishes both changed. The stat rose from 7 to 6, and gained a crow to guarantee the Guard Reliquary trigger, while the target number is up to 12 from the previous 10. The action itself is unchanged, allowing Yon Lo to rearrange the top of his Fate deck. The Guard Reliquary trigger has 2 changes that seem semantic, but are rather significant. It previously said to choose another friendly ancestor hired this game. Naturally, this would exclude Yon Lo since it says another. The new wording doesn't say another, but the other change is to alter the area of effect from 6 inches in line of sight to an 8-inch pulse. Since pulses do not affect their sources, this trigger now excludes Yon Lo from being the target of the trigger. In effect, this means Yon Lo can attach his own reliquary upgrade or the reliquary upgrade of any ancestor model he originally hired at the start of the game onto any available retainer keyword model that doesn't already have a reliquary upgrade attached, but cannot use this trigger to attach other reliquary upgrades to himself. The other trigger for Final Wishes, Terrible Wish, also received small yet significant changes. It formally took place after the rest of the action resolved, like any other trigger. As an immediately trigger, Terrible Wish now resolves as soon as it is declared if Yanlo has a tome in the duel. The order of resolution states that it is resolved even before the success of the duel is determined, so it's possible for Yanlo to flip a 3 or 4 of tomes, declare and resolve the Terrible Wish trigger, and then still go on to fail the duel for final wishes. The last change to the back of Yanlo the Spirit Walker's card is to his bonus action. A Weary Road has been enhanced and replaced with Choose a Path. It still has a 6-inch range and is limited to friendly models only, but now has a stat 6 and a target number 12. If he succeeds, the target still moves 3 inches, but now has a choice of either dropping a scheme marker or removing a marker it is now in base contact with. Circling back to the ancient Anchor ability, it used to say that Yanlo attached his reliquary upgrade to a friendly retainer keyword model after deployment, and any time that model finished any type of movement, Yanlo would place himself within 3 inches of that model. Now, the ability specifies that Yanlo's reliquary must be attached to either a minion with a retainer keyword or the Soul Porter, which is Yanlo's totem. It goes on to say that whenever that model finishes a general action move, Yanlo is placed within 1 inch of the other model. This means Yanlo is relocated to his reliquary's location only if that other model takes the walk or charge action, instead of all the other ways a model might be moved. Finally, Yanlo's reliquary upgrade received changes to make it match the ideas behind the other changes to Yanlo himself. The restrictions have been expanded to include the Soul Porter. The new Heavy Burden ability cancels out the Empty Vessel ability found on Gokudo and Komainu models, which gave them certain bonuses while they have reliquary upgrades attached. Release the Soul, the last change, previously attached this upgrade to the nearest eligible model when the model with this upgrade was killed. That happens automatically now only if there is an eligible model within 8 inches of Yanlo the Spirit Walker. If there is no retainer minion or Soul Porter near Yanlo when this model dies, the upgrade is discarded and will have to be attached through the trigger on his Final Wishes tactical action. Those are the model and stat card changes from the November 2022 errata. Your feedback, opinions, and analysis are welcome in the comments. If you haven't already, join our Patreon for early, ad-free access to all new content, and be sure to visit the Malifaux University gift shop for the latest in Malifaux-themed shirts, hoodies, drinkware, and more. Links are in the notes below. And remember, play friendly games, keep it simple, and have fun.